Committee will be in order. This afternoon we have an opportunity to meet Rules Committee to discuss legislation that will ensure that America's business and its scientific community have the resources that they need to remain competitive and on the cutting edge of innovation. Across the world there's a growing helium shortage, and that is why we are here today. And it's a serious issue. Manufacturers use helium in the production of many high-tech devices, such as semiconductors and fiber optic cable, which Americans use every day. In addition to manufacturing, scientists and medical researchers use helium in many devices, such as MRIs. Currently, the United States Federal Helium Reserve in Northwest Texas contains 30% of the world's helium supply. However, due to laws put in place and also reforms to the Helium Reserve Act in 1996, we are dangerously close to being unable to access the field that holds the gas unless we take immediate action. The shortage we face today is partially self-imposed. The reforms of 1996 created a pricing mechanism that has become outdated and places the cost of helium sold by the federal government well below market rates. Low cost and nearly ubiquitous access have incentivized widespread use of helium for a plethora of non-essential uses. As such, helium use skyrocketed and has put significant pressure on our long-term ability to adequately supply our nation's needs for this important resource. In addition to keeping the helium resources accessible, the legislation before us today modifies the pricing mechanisms to more accurately mirror market rates. This reduction of frivolous helium use is important to the natural ability that we have to use it for the better and higher needs of the country, and that is why we're here today. So I welcome not only the chairman of the committee, the gentleman from Washington, former member of the Rules Committee for a number of years, Doc Hastings, as well as the ranking member, Rush Holt from New Jersey, and I want to thank them very much for taking time to come to us today. And gentlemen, without objection, anything that you have in writing will be entered into the record. Any summary of testimony and expert testimony that you help to provide this committee with understanding how important this bill is and your leadership in this area, as has been enumerated many times in the media by the gentleman, Doc Hastings, would be appreciated. The gentleman from Washington, the chairman of the committee, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me state from the outset that this bill is sponsored by me, Mr. Markey, Mr. Flores, and Mr. Holt. And after saying that, nothing else needs to be said, it seems to me. But I will say, but we will.
But you will.
But we will, yeah, that's the way it goes. I thought, Mr. Chairman, you outlined pretty well. Let me go back in history as to why we're in this situation that caused the 1996 bill to get rid of the helium reserve. In 1996, in 1926, the wisdom of the Congress at that time was that the future of air flight would be dirigibles. And as a result, they thought it would be good practice to stockpile helium. Well, the future of air flight went a different way, and we kept stockpiling helium. And in 1996, it was ascertained that it had cost the taxpayers over $1 billion to stockpile and keep this helium. So a law was passed to essentially privatize the helium reserve. And there are two conditions when that privatization would end. That's the important part. One, when the debt was paid back, and it was a little over $1 billion, or 2015, whichever came first. Whenever that came first, that means that the helium reserve was gone and we had no more access to helium. Well, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, in your statement, there's been more of a demand now, principally in the high-tech sector of our economy, for helium. And as a result, it is anticipated that the debt will be paid back in the fall of this year. That's why this legislation is very timely. We need to get it passed so that we can put free market programs in place to get rid of the rest of the helium. And that's precisely what this legislation does, is it sets it out 1 year after this is enacted then we'll go out to bid to take care of the rest of the helium that's in the reserve. So it obviously has broad bipartisan support. But again, I want to just make the observation. This 1996 law goes away when the debt is paid off, and that'll happen this fall. And so we need to pass this legislation, and with that, be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would venture to say that you probably never thought that you would be talking about helium in legislation. As coming from the world that I came from when I came to Congress, of science research, I'm here to tell you that it is very, very important. And it was far-sighted policymakers who, 3/4 of a century ago, stockpiled helium when the uses of today, such as magnetic resonance imaging, MRIs at the hospital, superconductivity, and other things, were not imagined. All they could think of then were blimps, but it proved to be a wise move. I'm here to represent the bipartisan nature of this legislation. I thank you for giving us the time. The helium bill before us, I think, will go a long way toward fixing some of the problems with the pricing and the supply of helium. As you pointed out, nearly a third of the helium used globally comes from the Federal Helium Reserve in Texas. And it would address two of the crises that we see. The authority to continue funding and operating the reserve will expire at the end of this fiscal year because of previous legislation, and failure to extend this authority would cause a dramatic price spike and significant disruption in supply. Second, the price set by the Interior Department determines the price paid around the world for helium, and the National Academy of Sciences and the Government Accountability Office and the Interior Department Inspector General have all concluded that we're selling helium for less than it is worth, below the market price, and depressing private investment. So this is necessary for both of those reasons. The legislation will provide a better return for American taxpayers. It will protect federal users and the research community by ensuring priority access of this resource. And the Interior Department has expressed support for this legislation, and it's worth pointing out that a wide array of users, Corning, Dow Chemicals, Applied Materials, General Electric, Intel, IBM, Johnson Controls, Kodak, Siemens, or what remains of Kodak, I should say, and medical imaging interest groups and Electrical Manufacturers Association, Semiconductor Industry Association, all support this legislation because they all understand how a reliable supply at good market prices are for their work and for the well-being of Americans. The bill balances the needs of a wide variety of stakeholders and I think serves the taxpayers well. I will add briefly so that I don't take your time when you get to amendments to say that I've offered an amendment that I believe and hope that the majority and other authors of this bill will accept, that will expand on the study section of the Act. Because just as I said, this helium stockpile was a manifestation of farsightedness many decades ago. And in 1996, there was no way we could have predicted the tons of helium that are needed every year for MRI imaging machines, for example, and high-tech manufacturing. Today, we cannot predict what innovative new technologies and manufacturing processes will need the helium in the future. So I propose to modify the study section as written in the bill to urge an assessment that looks at domestic and international helium supply and demand, consideration of current and potential future uses, and an assessment of how we can be assured of adequate supply in the future.
Thank you very much. I want to thank both of you for not only being here today, but in particular the chairman, the gentleman who is a dear friend of mine who has the authority and the responsibility to know about and protect and wisely use, as is necessary, the resources of this country. Your ideas, not just because you live in the West, but your ideas about effective use of resources, also for the benefit properly of the taxpayer of this country, is to be commended. And I want to thank the gentleman for not only just presenting us with ideas, but really a far-ranging view. For it to be a bipartisan or supported the way it is with the people that you spoke about, Mr. Chairman, it's also an indication that you're a sales leader and can go and market the ideas, in this case, and have the consumer.
Don't push too far. We haven't gotten it through the House yet here.
Well, I really throw accolades to you because I think it's a wisdom of a young chairman to be able to go and do these things. And I was most appreciative of hearing of your leadership and seeing it firsthand. And to see a Rules Committee guy do well in the world is always, always in our best interest. And I'm delighted that you're here. I've got to go do something for just a few minutes. I'm going to defer to the gentlewoman for any time that she would like and ask that she take my place as chair. Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I wanted to ask, you're right, Mr. Holt. I had no idea we'd ever be up here talking about helium. This was a new one, but I became better informed on this yesterday after I saw it was on the calendar. I'm not sure I read this saw it anywhere, but where are there helium? There obviously are reserves somewhere else in the world. Mr. Hastings, who else has large helium reserves?
Well, it's not so much who has the reserves, but helium is a byproduct of natural gas.
Right.
And by itself, it's not viable to drill for helium. However, there are two worldwide facilities that are being built right now that are focusing on helium. One's in Wyoming, and the other is in Qatar. Those are the two, and they anticipate they'll be up and running, I think, within a year or two, which would coincide, we think, with the time that this helium reserve goes down so the market can be replenished. But I suspect, and Mr. Holt said it very well, even in 1996 there wasn't a big demand for this, but the high-tech industry has grown, and like everything else in the marketplace, I think there will be ability to fill the supply in the future. But right now, those are the two that we know that are being built.
And I would just add to that, as you heard, about a third of the world supply comes from this stockpile. So this stockpile has been critically important for the world supply. And it will be important for us to understand in the future what the demand might be. And so we can ask whether the Qatar and Wyoming separation processes are sufficient.
Thank you all very much. Mr. McGovern?
Well, thank you very much. And, you know, I don't have much of an expertise on helium, unlike some of my colleagues, so I trust you that this is an important bill. And clearly, based on the sponsorship of the bill, it covers the spectrum that's here in this House. So this, I think, will sail through relatively easily. And I'm not sure who is opposed to it, if any. But I'd just like to take this moment just to ask, not you, but maybe the acting chair can enlighten me. I mean, you know, we're reading every day about the impact of sequestration and flight delays, people not getting cancer treatments. I mean, this is going on and on and on, and yet we're not talking about trying to figure out a way to fix sequestration. You passed a budget here in the House. They passed a budget in the Senate, which they never do, and why can't? When are we going to go to conference? I thought that the whole point of that exercise of denying people pay was to get the Senate to act so that we can go to conference. The Senate has acted, the House has acted. When is there going to be a conference on the budget? So I don't have any problem with this. This is obviously not controversial, but we're about to go on our 6-week-long recess since the beginning, and there's important stuff that hasn't been done, and I'm just curious whether anybody can enlighten me. Mr. Holt?
Although I can't enlighten you on that, I did wonder why we need a rule on this bill that should sail through without
Could be a
objection.
suspension.
I thought maybe it was to keep us in session for a couple of days so that the conference committee could meet. But
Does anybody know what's going on around here? Okay, yield to the gentleman from Utah.
I know what's going on, and I'm not telling you.
Okay.
So much for the spirit of comedy that we started out with.
That's the new transparency and openness in this House. No, but I'm posing serious questions because there are serious consequences as a result of sequestration. And again, I mean, I thought the whole point of that legislation to take away people's pay if they didn't pass a budget was get the Senate pass a budget so we go to conference. And apparently I'm not going to get an answer, but so this will sail through easily, could probably go through under a suspension, but we'll make a few amendments in order to take up some time. But meanwhile, there's some really important business that we're not doing, and we're going on another recess. I yield back the balance of my time.
Well, I would say I think we're all concerned about the actions of the administration in terms of how it has handled sequestration, but as you've heard from these two gentlemen, this is an important issue, and so the House is going about its business as it should.
Does the young lady know when we're going to go to conference on the budget?
No, I think a lot of that has to do with the Senate and
They
the
passed the
chairman of the well, finally, after 4 years, they passed a budget, but only when we threatened to withhold their money.
But the House has to move to go to conference, as the gentlelady knows, so I'm just wondering, since you're in the majority party, do you have any idea when you your party might move us to go to conference?
You know, I've seen Mr. Ryan 2 or 3 times today, but I didn't stop him because he's always looking like he's on a mission, so I didn't stop him to ask him that question. Right. I was focused on getting here for this meeting, too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop, do you have any other comments you want to make? No? Okay. Mr. Hastings? Okay. Mr. Nugent? Mr. Webster? Dr. Ross? Dr. Ross Leighton? No. And I see the chairman is on his way back here, so thank you all very much.
Very much. I know they've been excused, but I appreciate their leadership on this issue. We also have next witness, Mr. Dent, the gentleman from Pennsylvania. Please be advised that without objection, whatever you have in writing will be entered into the record, and any summary or ideas that you have that you want to share with the committee, we welcome you, and the gentleman is recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to address Mr. McGovern's question about, why do we need a rule on this bill? Because there is an amendment, a legitimate amendment. I'm offering an amendment along with Representatives Higgins and Esty because we're very concerned about contract rights and how this legislation, though well-intended, and I agree with much of what my two colleagues have just stated, except the way this legislation is written currently, I believe it will impact the supply of helium for the end users, who, as Chairman Hastings and Rush Holt stated, include all sorts of folks in the IC world, semiconductors, MRIs. We all agree to that point. But the issue is that the legislation in its current form, I believe, will disrupt supply very significantly. I'll explain why. The amendment that I'm offering with Representative Higgins and Esty seeks to ensure the continued supply of helium for end users while requiring the Bureau of Land Management to honor existing contracts for the supply and delivery of helium. This amendment affirms that the federal government will honor existing contracts that are set to expire on October 1st of 2015. No provision of H.R. 527 will affect existing contracts between BLM and any persons that own helium stored in the Federal Helium Reserve, which is down in Texas, down in the Bush Reservoir, a helium enrichment unit that is part of the Helium Reserve Fund. This does not impact Congress's ability to authorize or take steps to improve the continued access of reliable and affordable helium to end users prior to the Federal Helium Program's October 2013 expiration. It's going to allow for the continued access to this domestic resources for end users by honoring agreements with private industry that effectively and efficiently refine helium for commercial use, not to stockpile it. Companies have made very significant investments down in this helium reserve to refine this. As was stated, you go to a natural gas field, you drill, and then there's usually helium contained in very small quantities down in Texas. And this reserve, by the way, will be depleted somewhere between 2018 and 2023. So the reserve is near depletion. So it's very important that we recognize these contracts. Also, this serves the public interest of continuous supply of helium while protecting these contract and property rights. The Natural Resources Committee argues that contracts that run for a length beyond the authorizing period prescribed by the 1996 Helium Privatization Act expire upon the expiration of the Federal Helium Reserve's debt. Reading the contracts as a whole, not just Section 3.2, shows that BLM had the necessary appropriations and authorizations at the time it entered into the most recent 5-year option contracts. Because the option was exercised, it should continue for the full 5-year period ending October 1st, 2015. The clear intent of the contract is for them to expire on October 2015. Nothing in that paragraph of Section 3.2 is inconsistent with this outcome. The result of the committee bill, however, is to undermine existing contract rights, which would put the government on the hook for damages. And these property rights have to be upheld for a number of reasons. You know, helium refiners currently have approximately $150 million in purchased helium stored in the Federal Helium Reserve. If H.R. 527 is enacted without this amendment, the refiners lose the ability to access this helium. By requiring the Secretary of the Interior to conduct semi-annual open auctions prior to the conclusion of the existing contracts, H.R. 527 undermines the investment-backed expectations of these private firms. Their contract rights are going to be trampled upon. There will be, I'm sure there could be litigation. It's going to be a messy situation. But more importantly, it's not just about the refiners. It's more important we're talking about the end users here. Consumers are going to be impacted. The best estimates, first of all, for the economic impact on the refiners would be somewhere between $750 to $850 million if this legislation goes through as is. I have nothing against public auctions, but we should first respect the contracts. But more importantly, if enrichment capabilities are halted with the enactment of this law, refined helium consumers would see 30% of worldwide supply and 50% of domestic supply become inaccessible. And without a valid contract, it will be physically impossible to move helium from the reservoir to end users. And that is really the key point. The legislation is well-intended. It may be bipartisan, but this will lead to disruption. The Senate is not on the same track as the House as it relates to the helium issue. I don't believe the administration has taken a position on this bill up to this point. But I would respectfully ask that this amendment be made in order so that we could help make this legislation better than it is, because in its current form, I certainly could not support it, and that's why there's a rule here, and that's why I think we need an amendment to make sure that this supply of helium will be there for the end users who make the smartphones, who make the semiconductors, and really help keep our economy moving. So with that, I yield back, and I thank you for your attention and courtesy.
President, thank you very much, and I appreciate you taking time to come up to the Rules Committee and lend your support for the bill and
well, not for the bill, but just for the amendment.
Well, you're seeking to amend the bill.
This is an amendment to the bill in its current form.
Are you suggesting that you're not for the bill?
Yes.
You're suggesting you would not be for the bill?
Correct. I am not.
I apologize. I did not mean to state
not in its current form.
Not in the current form. I appreciate the gentleman's
thank you.
input. Mrs. Fox.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Slaughter?
You.
Bishop?
Charlie, was this issue brought or discussed in the Resource Committee at any time? Was there an amendment that was similar to this?
I believe an amendment of this
I'm not on the committee, but I believe an amendment like this was offered and withdrawn. I think the issue was discussed in the committee. It was discussed in the committee, but I believe an amendment was offered but withdrawn.
Withdrawn.
Pardon me?
But withdrawn.
Yes.
Okay, thank
My
you.
understanding.
Thank you very much. Mr. McGovern?
No, thank you, and I just want to be clear. I mean, I have no problem with you offering an amendment. I hope there's an open rule. I think everybody should be able to offer an amendment to this, and I think, so that goes without saying. My only point was that if, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I were to tell you what the most important thing for us to do right now is, dealing with sequestration and getting a budget agreement, I think ought to be taken care of. We went through this charade where we passed a bill saying you would not get paid if you didn't pass a budget. The House passed the budget. The Senate passed the budget. The House is responsibility to move to go to conference. To the best of my knowledge, we haven't done that, and I'm just pointing that out because we're about to go on another recess for a week. So I certainly support your right to offer the amendment, and I hope anybody else who wants an amendment can offer it as well.
I don't disagree with your assessment. The only thing I'll say is if there's a shortage of helium, it will become a very hot issue very quickly.
Mr. Nugent? Ms. Hastings? Is that at the top of the ceiling or at the bottom of it? Just floating by. Good. Thank you very much. Mr. Webster? Dr. Roslayton? I want to thank you very much for taking time to be with us today. Your attention to this issue is very important, and we appreciate you taking time to be with us, and we'll consider your amendment, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the members of the committee for your consideration and courtesy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentleman's now excused. If I could advise the committee, we have some technical difficulties. Believe it or not, technical difficulties, and I would anticipate a delay of 5 or so minutes, minor. So I'd like to ask that the committee, if you would have time, to please stick around for a few minutes, and we would anticipate that we will be prepared to go briefly. As always, if it is more than that, I will advise you accordingly, but that's where we are right now. And so the committee will be in recess, subject to call of the chair. Committee will be in order. I have just had a discussion with the ranking member, Mrs. Slaughter, about a circumstance that we are presently involved in, and that is technical issues and difficulties with the legislation where we're trying to ensure that what goes into the rule and appears on the floor is correct. So I have now advised the committee that we are on about a 45-minute delay, but would encourage you to know that we will give you 15 minutes notice, and as quickly as we do discover that things have been done, fixed, that we will give everyone information about coming back. So any comments? Thank you very much. I appreciate the gentleman. We'll be at the recess, depending on the subject of the call of the chair. Thank you.
The committee will come to order. I want to thank the members for their patience. We, as the chairman said before he left, there was a little technical glitch involving another committee. They raised an issue about the bill. That has been resolved now, and so there are no issues with it, so we can move forward with the rule and with the bill. And so the chair will be in receipt of a motion from the gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee grant H.R. 527, the Responsible Helium Administration Stewardship Act, a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate equally divided, controlled by the chair and the ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources. The rule waives all points of order against the consideration of the bill. The rule makes an order as original text for purpose of amendment and amendment in the nature of substitute, consisting of the text of Rules Committee, parent 113-9, and provides that it shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment in the nature of substitute. The rule makes an order only those further amendments printed in the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, and shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to the demands of division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in the report. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instruction. Section 2 of the rule provides that each legislative day during the period from April 27, 2013 through May 3, 2013, the journal of the proceedings of the previous day shall be considered as approved. The chair may at any time declare the House adjourned to meet at a date and time within the limits of Clause 4, Section 5, Article 1 of the Constitution to be announced by the chair in declaring the adjournment. Section 3 of the rule provides that the Speaker may appoint members to perform the duties of the chair for the duration of the period addressed by Section 2 of the resolution as though under Clause 8A of Rule 1. And finally, Section 4 of the rule provides that the Committee on Education and Workforce may at any time before 5 p.m. on Tuesday, April 30th, 2013, file a report to Company H.R. 1406.
I would like to ask the gentleman from Utah if he would explain the rule and the bill.
Can I repeat it? Now, it's a structured rule. There will be an hour debate. I believe there's 4 of the 5 amendments were made in order. The 5th one not made in order because it was similar in scope, almost identical to one of the other amendments. The remaining amendment was similar, so it will not be included in the debate, and it also includes the standard district work period pro forma authority, as well as allowing a different committee that upon which you serve to file a report next week. I believe that's it.
Are there any amendments to the rule?
Move the committee grant H.R. 527 an open rule so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to the bill on the floor.
There's a motion to amend the rule, and I'd like all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No. Vote roll call, please.
The gentlewoman asks for a roll call.
Ms. Fox?
No.
Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Cole? Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Ross-Leitonen?
No.
Ms. Ross-Leitonen, no. Mr. Burgess? Ms. Slaughter?
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings? Mr. Polis? Mr. Chairman?
The clerk will report the vote.
2 yeas, 6 nays.
Are there any other amendments to the rule?
No.
Okay. Then the motion before us is to approve the rule. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
It appears the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Mr. Bishop will manage the rule for the majority.
Mr. McGovern.
Mr. McGovern for the minority. We don't expect another meeting this week, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.